What if I told you that Miami football was going to be back in 2024? Like, actually back for real this time. So let's start by taking a look at my top 25 as a whole. Here it is, 1 through 25 at this point in the season, my power rankings. There's a lot of interesting things. I'll definitely be making videos about some of the more controversial teams on here, like maybe Iowa State, Oklahoma State, Arizona to some. But today we're just going to be talking about Miami, number 13 in my ranking, led by the infamous Mario Cristobal. And I can already tell when I said the hook, Miami's going to be back, some of you instantly made the Georgia Tech fumble jokes, made the jokes about how Cristobal can't coach, he can only recruit, all that stuff. It's what I see all over social media whenever I talk about Miami. Tweets galore. Miami at 13 seems ridiculous. Miami will once again be frauds. Question, Miami's been mediocre. I've heard it all. Everything on Twitter. People love to slander Miami, and they love to slander Cristobal. What's the biggest knock on Mario Cristobal? Well, people say he's a good recruiter, but he can't coach. They say he can't succeed at a good school. They say that a slow start at Miami is reason for panic. Some people already calling for his job. Some people calling for his job just because of that one play versus Georgia Tech where him and his staff very stupidly opted to run the football late instead of kneeling it, and it cost them the game. I think it's pretty ridiculous to try and boil things down to one play to fire a coach. But what does this sound like? It sounds familiar. That's because it's the exact same stuff that people were saying about Steve Sarkisian just last year. He's a good recruiter, he can't coach, he can't succeed at a good school, and a slow start at Texas for Cristobal was a reason to panic. And now, I think that there's an eerie parallel between those two coaches. Sark at Texas goes from 5-7 to 8-5 to 12-2 in a playoff appearance last year, with the recruiting improving every single season. Mario Miami, it's almost the same story through 2 years. And in year 3, I think they have a major opportunity for a breakout season just as impressive as Texas. But it's not apples to apples, so let's talk about some of the differences. The biggest difference that I'll get thrown back into my face is that Mario Cristobal himself is not a great play caller and not a great game day coach. And I don't necessarily disagree with that, but I do think he's really improved this staff a lot around him. On one hand, you've got Shannon Dawson, who was an absolutely fantastic offensive coordinator at Houston, and so he went out and got him because one of the big issues early with Miami was not having the right guy. At defensive coordinator, they went out and got Lance Guidry, who was a defensive coordinator at Marshall and did some really phenomenal stuff there. And so the Hurricanes have really upgraded their staff as a whole. On top of that, something to love about Miami is the fact that they're buying for 2024. Teams with NIL and with the transfer portal can actually choose which year to go all in on. And Miami has clearly gone all in on 2024. You look at these portal hauls. Tyler Barron, a guy with all-American upside. Simeon Barrow Jr. from Michigan State was a fantastic pull. Sam Brown from Houston, a highly coveted receiver. Deani Hill, a cornerback from Marshall. They brought him along with a defensive lineman from Marshall and Elijah Alston. Those are two massive grabs that a lot of people wanted following their defensive coordinator, Lance Guidry. Another guy, Cam Ward, he's going to be their starting quarterback. Damian Martinez is one of the best portal grabs of the entire offseason. They upgraded at running back for sure. They upgraded at quarterback for sure. And another thing to love about this team, they're prepared for an injury at quarterback. It's something that actually plagued them for a little bit of last season. You look at this year, they're going to have Cam Ward, and they also bring in Reese Poffenbarger from Albany. And that's a guy that can totally step in and be a presence for them if Cam Ward would ever get injured this season. And that's something to love about a potentially contending team. Miami has always been pretty talented, even when they weren't very good recently. And so some people look at the talent roster and say, well, they're just not going to succeed because they've never succeeded with talent. But something that is clearly different with Miami is their depth at the line of scrimmage. Last season, they had the best run defense in the ACC, and they protected the quarterback well. They have guys like Reuben Bain Jr. They've added guys through the portal like the aforementioned Tyler Barron and Simeon Barrow Jr. And they're clearly just a different animal at the line of scrimmage under Mario Cristobal, something that he specialized in and something that you can't deny is a lot better. And on top of that, they're loaded at the skill positions. They've got Xavier Restrepo. They've got all their receivers back from last season with the exception of Colby Young, who jumped ship to Georgia, but they added guys like Sam Brown. They added guys like Damian Martinez, and they're loaded at those positions in such a way that a line of scrimmage that is really, really good and going to be better than most other line of scrimmages they play, those weapons can really be taken advantage of in a way that those old Miami teams couldn't do. Another thing, Mario Cristobal has done it before. Somehow, and for some reason, people have this selective memory with how Mario Cristobal's time went at the Oregon Ducks. And it's because in 2021, they ended the season really disappointing, and then he ditched town and wasn't with Oregon anymore. And I think that left a bad taste in people's mouths. But he won a conference title in 2019. He won a conference title in 2020 as well. So if you want to slander him for the 4-3 record in 2020, you've got to count the season. You've got to count the conference title. If you don't want to count it, fine, don't count it. He still had a conference title. He still won the division with his foot halfway out the door in 2021, and overall was clearly turning the Ducks around before he left to take a job at his alma mater. So my message to you is simple, and it is clear. For 2024, do not doubt Miami, and do not doubt Mario Cristobal. Doing so is a dangerous pastime.